Yeah, the four-pronged shin. We should spend some time with that. I have to learn more about it too, but there is one on that head to fill-in also. Four-pronged shin, the messianic shin. So, welcome, everybody. Just take a moment to presence ourselves, to arrive a little bit more. And we'll take a little just quick go round to get here, inviting you to maybe share some little tidbit of Purim joy or Purim something, whatever Purim was for you this year, if it was anything. And also, or are you arriving with some particular question or curiosity today? Maybe you could name that. And let's do this so we hear each other's voices. I know that West is pedaling home, so I don't know if they can speak, but yeah, maybe if somebody wants to start and then you can call on someone else and we'll just pass it around that way. And maybe don't think too hard about it.
I'll start.
Okay.
I'm just gonna do it. Okay, so I didn't think I was gonna get to do anything for Purim, but then I sent that photo to y'all. I last minute got a hold of some delicious cookies from a friend in the community, and I attended. Well, Joe and I both attended, but not together, from afar in different houses. Both went to this online. It was Cole Sedek's Purim spiel / drag show extravaganza with all these little kids there, and it was just such a bomb because, with all these terrible legislative bills passing in Tennessee, all about kids not being able to be around drag, and then having this like spiritual, gathering of like all these children, like literally being around drag queens, or just also like, what is even drag? Like, yeah, we're all just in drag. We're all just dressing up all the time. It was just so wonderful. It was really sweet, and there was a band, and yeah, that's my Purim experience. It was really, 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 yeah, just comforting and joyful. And I guess any curiosities that I have with embodied Kabbalah, the four-pronged shin, I know that's not embodied necessarily, but I feel like it is. I feel like that's an embodied thing, and I would love to explore that someday more. Yeah, but just, I don't know, like the mystery. How do we embody the mystery? Is maybe a curiosity I have. And I'll pass it to Lex.
How did you know I was so ready for this? I had a big Purim weekend for sure. I made 300 hamantashen. They were all really good. I made them with my friends. I think the funnest part was before we went to go like into this church commercial kitchen that we were using. It was just kind of this funny scenario where like everyone kind of like triangulated across from where we were on Saturday and all met at because it was like sunny and 40 degrees out here. And so we all went to the city island park that I was just with Lexi the other day at, and jumped in the water, which was my most joyful.
Wow.
Yeah, just like it was really, really fun. And then we all went and baked the cookies. And then the next day had the spiel, and a lot of my friends were acting in the spiel. And it was just very fun weekend of community and Purimness. But then last night on the full moon and Purim itself, I went to the same island, and I often walk there at night, which is a strange thing to do. No one does it. And I do like Bodadut there. And I had an encounter with a beaver last night that like was really beautiful. And I'm still kind of like unraveling. Yeah, it was, I never see a beaver on the island, and I like couldn't really see this one, but I know it was a beaver, and we just like, it basically like just swam and like kind of walked with me down this trail along. It was just like, I'm really still reeling from it. And it also paralleled like a heat Bodhidut moment I had at in Bolinas with this coyote that also like came and walked with me for a while. So I'm just a little bit, so I don't have a lot of embodied questions right now, but I do think I'm trying to understand what beavers have to say to me, or the specific beaver, and kind of like I was learning a little bit more about beavers today and how they like can't stand the sound of running water. They like inherently need to stop the sound of running water. That's like the motivation that they move to dam. It's not so much like they know that they need to dam, it's like they want. And there's something like it, like this knowingness of the beavers that is like creating this entire ecology and doing all of this magic by just like this specific like embodied kind of thing, which I know is true in a lot of animal like like behaviors in general, but I'm noting that one. So thanks for listening. I'll pass it to Lexi.
Oh, wow. I'm like really feeling that beaver experience. How special. Wow. Yeah, I am like, I feel like all of my parts are catching up with one another. I've been on the move for days and just arrived at the farm in rural Illinois. And yeah, so our new group of apprentices showed up just Sunday. We all kind of gathered down there, and we yeah, hit the ground running with Purim. Several folks had developed a little Purim spiel, and so we got our costumes together and had our first like collective experience in goofy performance together. Made some Hamantaschen. It felt very it was nice to be able to roll in and have had people dreaming and scheming and setting things in motion to fall into. So yeah, definitely a joyful night. And yeah, today, and I've been, my grandmother is named Esther, and so I have chosen this time as her yard site. So have had kind of a mellow day today, with some candles, been just kind of sitting and spent some time with a photo of her that I love. Made a little altar. So yeah, that's my Purim so far. And I'm also kind of in yeah, just last night kind of invited some of the apprentices to go off for a night walk in the woods, and found like incredible enthusiasm, and was like, oh, and there's this practice, and they're like, awesome, let's learn this practice. So I feel like there's a yeah, I'm feeling eager to kind of deepen in that in community, and so that's something that feels like a something I want to lean into in the coming weeks and months. Yeah, and I will pass to Ariel.
Right. Hello, it's good to see you all. I was trying to figure out which Purim joy to share. But I think I didn't really grow up with Hamantaschen, like I knew what they were, but as an adult, I was like, oh, I should make these cookies because it's a holiday and I should bake things. So I made them by myself, but because I spent Saturday with my parents, I like got to make Hamantaschen with my mom, who also incidentally like flew to Florida yesterday to visit her mom, and so was able to bring some with her. So yeah, so it just feels really special to like have made hamantaschen for my grandma. I haven't heard how she's received them yet. I should call them tomorrow morning. But yeah, that feels good. And I don't know what questions I necessarily have, except like awareness of some pain that that's like been showing up a lot, mostly just like tension, but been very present and not going away despite various body work. And so yeah, so thinking about the relationship of pain to embodied practice, and yeah, and I will have to leave like 5 of 8 because I have therapy at 8, or the hour. So, but I'm glad to be with you all until then. Molly.
Hi, everyone. Yeah. Oh, my cat's outside and the door is closed. And it's loud, so sorry for the things. That's like kind of how today and last night has been, is I'm like on a track and then something that's urgent pulls me off of the track. And it's been a really powerful practice. I haven't felt joy in the sense of like happiness and simcha, but I've really been feeling fullness of feeling like I feel like I'm like somewhere and then something pulls me away and then I'm like really there. And that, yeah, like I like find myself really pulled in a way that feels really all consuming. And I'm like, what is this link between joy as simcha and joy as any feeling fully felt? And what's coming to me is like this all consumingness, and how to like let whatever is alive like take over. And I've been fasting today also, which fasting is a really spiritual practice for me. And joy as any feeling fully felt is a quote by Rabbi Alan Liu and someone named Marissa Joy in the Pacific Northwest. There's a few different places that I've heard that cited, so it's not me. Yeah. So that's my Purim joy. And I'll also have to leave a bit early, and I have a feeling I might be off camera for a lot of this, but I'm present. And an embodiment question. Was that the second prompt?
Just any question you're holding coming in today, maybe in relation to embodied Kabbalah, but yeah.
Embodied Kabbalah, nice. Thank you for presencing that right now. Something that I met a new somatic therapist today, which I'm really curious and excited about, and a like dynamic that she brought up was there's like offerings that she can give that are like letting my body and myself be where it is, and just like moving what's there. And then there's offerings that are like putting things into my body. I can't remember exactly how she said it. And as we were talking about it, I was thinking of bringing in and letting go. And so curious about what we're doing and what is going to happen in this next chunk of time, and if it's like feeding the faculty of bringing in or letting go, and perhaps the dance between those two. And West, if you are here and want to share and haven't, pass it to you, but if not, I think back to you, Rabbi Diane.
There's West.
All right.
Here I am. I'm still biking, but I'm just like, this is so wonderful. I wish like a podcast of people who I love talking would be just like the thing I got to, like, I'm biking and just hearing all of you and being like, and then I hear Ariel and it's like I'm there with them, and then I'm with Molly and I'm like I'm there in Molly's room, and I'm just like, oh, this is my dream. Anyway, that's just an aside to say that if anybody ever wants to prepare that for me, I would probably weep. Yeah, I'm feeling a lot of the feelings of like, oh, not enoughness, not Jewish enoughness, because like I don't have a Jewish community here to celebrate Purim with. I don't have a Jewish community here at all. And so if I don't initiate it in my house, it doesn't happen Jewishly. And yeah, that really is heartbreaking at times, but right now I'm just like feeling more like, wow, it's just great to hear what everybody else is doing, and feel a little sense of longing and like be okay with that sense of longing. I did read Arthur Waskow's chapter on Purim last night, and was like really loved it. Some of the chapters in Seasons of Our Joy really don't land with me, or really like stink like Christian hegemony to me, but the chapter on Purim was really sweet and joyful, and I liked reading that. And today I made candles with my students and out of beeswax that we harvested ourselves from our hives at school, and that was like really wonderful. And it's my last week with these students, and it was just like really cool to be in their trust, like like when I have these students every day all day for 12 weeks, and then I was just like really enjoying how I could feel how much we just like knew each other's personalities and trusted each other and like bickered with each other, and it was just like so sweet and cool. And that was what I did today, so I'm really grateful for that. And then a Kabbalah question that I've been really curious about is like, I've always wanted to know more about the 4 directions, the 4 winds, and the 4 worlds, and like, that's just like an ongoing curiosity that I have had, and so I'm just planting that. And yeah, back to you, Rabbi Dan. I'm gonna continue cycling and listening.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Oh, well, yeah, Purim. I'm really grateful this morning. I've been going when I can at 8, it's 8 a.m. Pacific time, to a prayer vigil that's being sponsored by the Abrahamic Reunion, to support some kind of healing, peace activism in Israel, Palestine. And so Rabbi David Zaslow, who's a friend of mine who has a community in Ashland, was the prayer leader today. And he gave a beautiful teaching about Purim and masks, and how we put on masks on Purim to remind ourselves that all of the ways that we sort of garb ourselves in identity are some kind of mask, and that the Chag is the deep meaning of it, if you will, the Kabbalistic meaning of it is to remind ourselves that underneath all of these different masks, there is the unity, there is the oneness. So that was lovely to be there. It was short, 20 minutes. I heard the Megillah reading last night on Zoom from New York City. And the other just really joyful thing was I got to hang out with my friend Julie, who's another embodied practitioner, teacher, founder of the Embodied Jewish Wisdom Network, and we took this hike, and it's been raining here a lot. And so we went on a path in a park that is by a big dam. Speaking of beavers, all this is a gigantic dam. And it was an unfamiliar trail, and it was very, very, very muddy and steep up and down. And we had a lot of fun. We did slipping and sliding, and the water going down between our legs and stuff. So later I'm gonna have to figure out how to get the mud off my hiking boots. But so if I could do things like this outside every day, that's the most joyful thing, and I don't always do it. So
Amen.
yeah. So embodied Kabbalah. What I want to do today was to start with a practice, and then give you maybe share some information, and then maybe we'll see if we have time for another practice. But I'd like to do a practice before I say more about what Kabbalah is, what embodiment is for me, and what the whole field that we're looking at is. It's really related to everything we've been doing, including this conversation we had on Sunday about prophecy. And so yeah, I'm going to bring up my screen, and I'm going to share. You already have this. Let's see, I have to stop this share, I guess, and then make another share. Maybe we'll do this later, this chant. But for now, let's go to the next screen. So this is the screen that I sent you about Adar, the month of Adar. And I'm going to say, similar to what Reb Ellie said on Sunday, if a question's coming up or you want to comment on something, just kind of interrupt. I can't see everybody when I have my screen shared like this, but yeah, you could just say you have a question or something to say. So this information, all the information on this screen is coming from the Kabbalah, pretty much. And I'll just say this bit of information, that the word Kabbalah means receiving, or what is received. And it comes from the Hebrew verb root likabel, to receive, which begins with a kuf, just like all these other words over here. I've got it right. I've got my cursor on it. So this is the root, kuf bet lamed, kabel. And that's the same root as Kabbalah. So it's something about receiving direct communications from some kind of more universal consciousness, or larger intelligence, or collective unconscious, or the universe. Or
Rabbi Diane, I have a question.
yeah, who's talking?
It's Molly.
Oh, hi, Molly.
When you say the Kabbalah, like when you say all of this comes from the Kabbalah, is that a book?
It's a bunch of books and orally transmitted information.
Great. Okay.
And
Thank
I'll
you.
say more about the streams of it, but it's
Cool.
sort of, when you say Kabbalah, what you're saying is something equivalent to Sufism. Kabbalah is the general rubric for Jewish mysticism. So just as Sufism is like the area of mystical Islam, so yeah, there's different names in different cultures for the mystical, both the body of information, but also a process that has been engaged in for millennia. So the practice I want to do is around the 4-letter name for this month, and where these bits of information come from different sources in the realm of the Kabbalah. We'll see if we have time today. I want to share with you some material, kind of an introduction to the Sefer Yetzirah, the book of formation, which is the oldest book of Kabbalah that we have, or one of the very oldest. So a lot of the information comes from there, but this, what you see here underneath Adar is a particular arrangement of the 4-letter name. And this comes from the Zohar, which is a much later book of Kabbalah from the 13th century, and also from Lurianic Kabbalah, which is a much later stream from the 16th century. And a teacher called Rabbi Yitzhak Luria, who was a famous Kabbalist in the town of Sfat in the Holy Land in the 16th century. So the information comes from different strata of time, different countries, different places, and it's channeled through different people. And so from the Tikkunei Zohar and from Rabbi Yitzhak Luria, we get this idea that there's a different arrangement of the 4-letter name of the divine for every month of the year. And this is the arrangement. The normal arrangement is Yud He Vav He, and that is the arrangement for the month of Nisan, which is considered kind of the new year, the spring new year. It's one of several new years, but it's in many ways kind of the main new year, because that's seasonally when it makes sense for the year to begin, in the spring when everything is like birthing. And this is the arrangement for Adar, which is considered in that schema to be the last month of the year, the 12th month. Hey, hey, Yud, Vav. So I'm going to share a screen that has just that on it, so we can get a little more focused. And I've moved it into the vertical because that's how we're going to work with it. So some of us worked with tracing the 4 letters on the body at the retreat. Some of us did that together. And we did it in the normal order, the Yud, the He, the Vav, and the He. We're going to practice with it in this order for Adar and mapping it onto the body. So I'll say more about Kabbalah and embodiment after we do this practice. But the 4 letters also correlate in some way with the 4 worlds. So all of these practices are many layered, and it takes time and kind of an investment of experience and sort of just feeling your way into it to begin to encompass more of the layers. So I'm going to just invite us to, when we're addressing the Kabbalah, it's not so much our cognitive mind that's engaged. It's a whole other order of mind and presence that's engaged. So if you can like soften your brain and the part of you that likes to understand things linearly and have a structure, it is structured, but see if you can just let yourself float in it. One of my teachers of Kabbalah is Danny Matt, who is the translator, the preeminent translator and scholar in the world of Zohar, one of the main works of Jewish mysticism. And he always says, when you're studying Zohar, just let it wash over you like a dream. Don't try to figure it out, because it's not logical. doesn't really speak to that part of ourselves. It goes to a deeper, more expanded, less organized part of ourselves. So it's almost dreamlike. So that's my caveat for all of our time together, all of our classes, is that kind of let your body take over, let things sort of seep in. Don't worry if you don't get it, don't understand it. And the layers gradually start to make more sense. And just, it's all imagery. It's all trying to get our intelligence and our words around something that can't really be languaged. So hey yud vav, when it's arranged vertically, the first hey corresponds to the most expansive, kind of least material spiritual upper world, that world of Atzilut, the world of nearness to some kind of presence beyond the material. The second hay is more in the world of Bria, which is the world of creation, where we start to sort of have imaginings that coalesce into imagery and ideas and language. And the Yud, which is usually in the place of Atzilut, but this month it's in the place of Yetzirah, so the place of kind of emotional body. And if you want to locate it physically in a vertical way, this is all imagery. This is not a right way to do anything. It's just one among many possible images, but that's more in the torso, kind of heart, belly. And then the Vav, which is, it's usually, Yud Hey, Vav Hey, that Vav is usually here where the Yud is, like a channel, like a tunnel or a conducting channel. In this month, it's on the bottom. In the world of Asiya, so Yetzirah is that world of more flow and emotion, and Asiya, the world of action, materiality, the densest world. So the Kabbalists, in finding these different arrangements, then began to develop a whole sense of imagery around these letters and the energies that they might be representing, and how that correlates to this particular time of year, this month, this quality of time.
I have a question. It's Alexa.
Yeah, please.
I'm kind of curious, like, given that the ordering of the letters is so significant for the interpretations around the energy, like, how did they get to these orderings?
I don't know exactly, but they channeled it. That's I'm pretty sure they channeled it. Maybe they experimented, and maybe there was some other system that they were using, but I actually don't know. What I know is that I can play with it and see how it feels in my body and my mind. And if it feels helpful, then I dance with it. And if it's not helpful, let it go. But I also feel like when I dance with it, I'm coming into conversation with these teachers, practitioners, and people from hundreds of years ago, that I get to be in conversation with them. And so I'm gonna stop the share so we can see each other and physicalize this practice a little bit together. I don't know. Does that help at all, Lex?
Oh yeah, totally. And
Oh, great.
I love asking the question that you can't know. So
I mean, I wish I'd been a fly on the wall in a certain way, but then I remember I said that at the retreat, and somebody said, I don't want to be a fly on anybody else's wall. So, but I do. I kind of wish I could have, and maybe I was in some way. Maybe we were. So any other questions about that before? What we're going to do is we're going to map this, do movement that kind of works with the shape of the letters, because that's what they were also working with. they were working with the shape of the letters as well as other layers of resonance association. The yud is you could see it's a concentrated little letter, and it's usually associated with divinity and getting to the most dissolved place that we can get. But here it's more in the center of ourselves if we want to map this vertically on the body, which is only one way to do it, but it's a way that I've been working with. And so anything else? Let's try it, and then we'll see if any more questions come up. So I'm going to stand up. This can be done, sitting down. Also, can be done lying down, but there's also something about being this conduit. The body is a kind of pipeline that connects the earth and the cosmos and the expansive cosmos that we could call shorthand for that is heavens and earth. So I'm going to stand up. And back up a little bit. Whew. So always like to just take a moment to move and stretch freely. If we're going to do something more structured, just shake out what wants to shake out. See what joints maybe you haven't paid as much attention to yet today, and they want to lead you into a little bit of movement. Spine is always good to move your spine. And notice as you begin to move what it does to your breathing. Is there a way that your breathing is affected as you move the body? Or does the breathing want to join in and contribute in some way? I also like to do sometimes some shaking or bouncing to just loosen up the contents of my body. So you've got bones and muscles, so you also have your organs, your nervous system, all the bodily fluids. And you have your backside as well as your front. And another thing I like to do is just some rubbing, shaking, rubbing, anything to wake up the energy, the skin under your clothing. And then just add a little bit of sound. Just could be sighing, breathing, could be toning, or you could just be yawning, coughing. Whoa. So the vocal mechanism is part of our body. It's part of our embodiment. It's not separate. It's part of our respiratory system, breathing. And babies make noise when they move. They don't move without making noise unless somebody has quieted us down. So it's a good reclaiming of I move and I sound. Okay. So you want to just keep going with that, but I'm going to show you the different ways of doing this. I experiment with it differently every year when I come around to the month. But the upper hay, I'm going to stand back here from my shoulders up over my head, and then I'm making the crossbar. And I like to do it as if I'm actually looking at the letter. But you could do it the other way too. The hay has an opening at the top and then a big opening at the bottom, a little opening at the top, so that things can kind of flow in from the top. And I'm doing the opening on my left side here. So this is the upper hay. And you can see that what I'm kind of doing is I'm carving out an imaginary letter. And when we get to looking at the Sefer Yetzirah, which is this very early work of mysticism, you're going to see that the way that work posits that God created, that the creator created this cosmos was a work of carving and chiseling. So there's some precedent for that in the tradition itself for what we're doing, this carving out. So that's the upper hay. And then the next hay, I've been experimenting with doing these in different planes. So I'm starting by drawing the cross bar as if the hay is in this plane, the table plane. I'm drawing across my chest and then pushing the two legs of the hay out in front of me, ending with the fingers just coming forward. So this is the second hay. So we have the first hay up here, and then the second hay here. And that creates a space right here for me to drop my head forward. My head is the yud coming forward like a little comma into the space between my arms. And then just look here and I'll show you the vav. I bring my hands together and I make a channel going down as far as you want to go down. I like to go all the way to the floor. And then I unfurl my spine and I start over. And I usually do this. I'm going to teach you a chant. I don't know who wrote this chant, but I've been doing it for years. Repeat it 7 times. The chant repeats this 7 times. This, then the head comes forward for the yud, brings the spine forward, and I bring my hands together and draw that channel down. So what is it that we're channeling? Who knows? Maybe you will have a sense of something, that of energy, of consciousness, of color, of light, but the sense of the word that's often used is shefa, which is like divine flow. It's like the flow of the divine. Like a flow of presence or caring or compassion or abundance or, but there's a sense of this, something is flowing through us, through me when I do this. And I'm embodying these 4 letters in the particular configuration for this month. So if you want to do it with me, I'm going to do the chant. And by the second or third time, you'll get the melody, and you can also chant it and sing it with me. And the chant has 7 repetitions of the whole sequence. So starting with the feet of the hay and drawing upward. Hey, hey, you breathe in as I come up. Hey, hey, you. You. Chant kind of goes back to the beginning now where it started. Hey, 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 He changes a little bit here. You. The last one. Return to vertical if you're standing. Maybe close your eyes. Just take a moment to feel how your body feels and what the after image, kinesthetically, visually, auditorily, in any way, in any sense, is for you. What's the after image from doing that movement? Can you feel the carving kind of inside your body as well as around your body and the space around your body? And what is it like, just for a minute, you can keep your eyes closed for this, to move a little bit. You don't want to move too far in space with your eyes closed, but just in your place with the consciousness, maintaining the consciousness of those forms, of those letters as you move. And what is it like to just let your eyes softly open without focusing, to come back to wherever your chair is if you're standing by your screen, but to maintain, even as you come back to seated, even as you come back to the screen, to maintain that sense of whatever it was you felt doing that. And then to sit for a minute with it. You can close your eyes again once you're settled and just breathe and just feel. And can you sense your back, the back of your body, involved in this, engaged? Your feet and your hands. So as you sit and keep your eyes closed, if that's comfortable for you, I just want to share a bit of what might be the information that somebody else channeled, that when the hay is on top there, there's kind of a huge flow because it's so open at the bottom. And then the way we did it, when you reach out on that second hay, that flow is incoming also from the world around you. And then it's concentrated in your heart, your belly. And then it's channeled right into the earth, and maybe literally into the earth, or into, you could think of it more metaphorically as this material world, the density of the material world. That's one way of expressing this particular configuration of 4 letters. And you'll understand more the importance of the letters again when we look at the Sefer Yetzirah, the mystics who created that, believed that the world was created through the agency, the tools of the 10 Sephirot, 10 emanations, and the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. So, gently, when you feel ready to come back, and if you don't feel ready to come back, that's fine too, but let's see if there's anything that you want to share from that experience. I know you have to leave momentarily, Ariel, right now, so. Somebody else needed to leave early too, but. Anything you want to say or ask before you go? Or anyone?
What's coming first and foremost for me is just thank you. Yeah, I think we were flies on the wall, and maybe not flies on the wall, but like cells in the body or something too.
Mm.
I resonated with the like articulation you just said of what the letters mean. And the one that was like, I mean, there's like slight differences, but the one that felt different for me particularly was the second hey.
Mhm.
Well, it felt like there was like the hay coming down. I loved that, the big rush, that big opening. And then this is like moving it across me and into me. And then this was spreading it out. And that felt really powerful to have this motion of like, yeah, speaking maybe actually to before this, like receiving and offering dynamic that, yeah, like differentiating and also importantizing each motion of the in and the out. So much goodness. I also really loved, I felt the change of the letters in this way that I've never really felt before, even though I've done practices with you where we move around letters, and there's something about the way that you brought it now in this moment and all of us that thank you and thank you. Yeah.
I'll just say we're scheduled to go until 15 after the hour. So I know Molly has to go, but we will go till 15 after. So thank you, Molly. Yeah. Anyone else? I mean, sometimes I've done years of somatic practice, and when I do these practices, and especially when I first began to do them much more regularly and fully, it would take me, and in groups we would go to a very inarticulate place. So it's challenging to pull words out of an experience, and the reason why I always open and invite that space is because what we're eventually doing is we're building a bridge between sort of the ineffable inner experience and our more linear cognitive processes, which is exactly what's happening, between Chokhmah and Bina, which we'll get to talk more about, but right brain, left brain, which is simplification, oversimplification, but the intuitive, non-language, non-linear aspects can come into conversation with our voices, our words, but it takes time because that's not the way we've been trained and educated in our culture for the most part. And it's worth it, and it takes time.
Something that struck me about this practice, well, first of all, it's like mind-blowing whenever I do a practice with you, and it just reminds me how disembodied I have been trained to be throughout my life, or that maybe humans have been trained to be, and how much this just brings me back into my body and just reminds me the power of just like the flow, like what you were saying about the flow is like, really, that's what I got from this practice, was like drawing down this flow of energy. It felt like such a downward motion for me, to the place where when you told us to, like, you know, sit back down and close our eyes, and I was like noticing I was still swaying, you know, I couldn't stop swaying. And like my feet felt really firmly planted on the ground, like they weren't going anywhere. Like it was like a really like just grounding feeling, like in the real sense of the word. So yeah, it was just really beautiful to like actually feel in my body and like experiencing a flow, and just noticing. I was thinking about like the month of Adar being this like last month of the year, and how this like motion is kind of this like grounding, like down, like kind of a closure. And I'm just curious now about like what what the month of Nisan would feel like in my body with this type of practice.
Yeah, well, we'll be doing it. We'll do it since we get to, I think we have the next few months, we have a time together each month. Anything else that you want to harvest before maybe I give you a little bit more information to chew on about Kabbalah and embodiment?
Oh, one last thing, actually. It was hard for me to hear the melody, so I was curious if you'd be able to like send us a little recording. Okay.
So I'll just share a few more things for you to chew on, and we'll keep building this over the next few months as we get together, and I'll record it so people who can, if you can't make every time, you'll have that. So as I mentioned, the Kabbalah is a term that encompasses a vast field of Jewish mysticism, mystical texts, practices. The verb root, lekabel, means to receive. And so this is wisdom that, you know, it's in the realm that we began to address on Sunday with Hippodadud and talking about prophecy. The original Jewish mystical streams flowed out of the biblical prophets, and particularly two visions. There's a vision early in the book of Isaiah of being in the temple and seeing angels and fire. And this is when Isaiah was called as a prophet. And I think, if I'm recalling, in the vision, an angel flies down and touches a hot coal to Isaiah's mouth. And it's like, you know, his mouth, this will be a channel. So there's that particular vision. And then there's the vision in the early part of the book of Ezekiel, where Ezekiel was trained to be a temple priest, but then was exiled to Babylonia at the time when the Babylonians conquered the kingdom of Judea, and they either killed or took away the entire ruling class, as it were, the priests, the king, and hello, Susan.
Oh, hey there.
Hey,
Hi, I'm sorry if are you all done? I just wanted to see if
we got 10 more
yep,
minutes.
you're still there. Okay, well, I just finished work and wanted to listen while driving home. So,
We're glad you're here with us, and
all right.
the rest of it's recorded, so you can listen to it another time. But
Awesome. Okay, thank you.
we did a practice, and I'm giving a little bit of information about Kabbalah.
Okay.
And I'll also say a little bit more about embodiment too. But so Kabbalah is the realm where there's a direct receiving. The prophets, the biblical prophets, were what they heard and received, and the charge that they had was really to call out social injustice in their time and in their cultures. And that's what they did. They went and they said, this is wrong. People are not being taken care of properly. Society is crumbling. Was the essential message. And it's going to crumble more if you don't get it together. But the mystics, it was much more of an internal process and a yearning to connect with the divine, not necessarily to foment any kind of social change or make, impose anything on anyone, but to basically, I guess you could say, to bring the messianic time, the time when the divine presence is somehow acknowledged and flowing into this world unimpeded. The assumption being that when that would be so, if that is so, in a way it's always so, but we don't always receive it. If we were able to receive it, there wouldn't be injustice, there wouldn't be violence and war, there would be wholeness, there would be peace. I think that's probably the underlying assumption, but each generation and each project was held a little differently. And there was a yearning to connect with something greater. So in that sense, this does also relate to what we were talking about on Sunday. And it's important to know that this information, of which there's a huge field of information, was passed down with great circumspection and great concern about that it is dangerous in the wrong hands. It is dangerous if it's not really held in a complete moral and ethical system that's founded on basic principles of care and compassion for others, and equity and justice, as much as it can be expressed in any particular cultural milieu. So it was secret information. It was only taught kind of secretly and passed from teacher to student. And there are all kinds of regulations about how you don't teach this to groups of people. You only teach it to individuals when they're ready, and they have to have the right container. They have to be grounded, and they have to have studied, and they have to know the classical texts and all of the ethics and the morality, and be grounded in family life in some way so that they don't fly off the planet. So that's where you get sort of this shorthand, oh, it's only for 40-year-old men who have wives and children. Well, that's a shorthand for saying you have to have a grounded container to hold this information. Otherwise, it actually, and there are stories about this, it can drive you mad to dissolve that much and to connect with the larger energies of the cosmos. So, yeah, students needed to be grounded in ritual, ethical, and the moral matrix of mature practice and earthly life. Because the point really, mostly in Judaism, is not to disappear up on the mountain and become a saint. It's to bring it in so that it informs how we live. This presence, this sense of expanded energy, which is joyful, even though it doesn't always feel happy. It can be painful, but the joy is in the connecting. And then how that really, maybe bit by bit, could inform my life, your life, our individual lives, and then our family life, and then maybe our community, and then larger spaces. Let me give you a couple more things because we just have like a few more minutes.
Can I
Yeah,
ask a question?
interruptions. Yes.
I think in what you just shared about the ways that the teachings, like what is needed to hold them as they're being transmitted. Just wondering if you can speak to that as like both as you've received it as a student and then as you choose to share as a teacher, what how that comes up for you.
As a student of Judaism, I don't think I received it in the best way. I don't think it was taught to me in the best way because I'm just giving you my experience, so not right or wrong, because I think that we need to have a sense of our body's containership. And that was not taught in the Jewish spaces where I learned these practices. But it's an integration that I've made and that others have made who bring somatic and movement information into dialogue with the Kabbalah, so that it's not just some, from here up. Theists, often one branch is called the Theosophical Kabbalah, which is very heady. And that to me is not an adequate container. And maybe there's a feminist aspect of this, or bringing a more, multi-experiential kind of sensibility to this learning. But I feel that part of what I needed to receive the information is I needed to be really aware of and present in my body as much as I could be. And so I feel like there's a generation of us who are, bless you, who are adding this layer. That's why I call it embodied Kabbalah, to the Kabbalah. And a book just came out recently that's actually called Embodied Kabbalah by Matthew Ponock. And this book he selected a series of Kabbalistic teachings. It looks a little bit like the Talmud on the inside. And then because he tells his own story in the beginning of somebody whose basically mind was kind of blown when he studied all this stuff in Israel, and it really threw him into a very bad place. And he had to stop and get a lot and fill in a lot of pieces, including work with a somatic therapist, before he could come back to this material. And so what he does is he gives each teaching, he talks about the teacher and the history of the teaching, and then he reflects on it and he makes suggestions as to how to practice in your body so that you can ground the teachings. So it's a really interesting book. I started reading it and I'm really enjoying it. And it's unusual, but there are different ones of us are finding different ways to add that aspect to the containership that makes it safe and useful, I think, to do this work.
I have a question. Yeah, that just hearing you say like that used to be, I mean, it's sounding like you're saying that it did used to be a part of art tradition that maybe like is so ancient and maybe was lost along the way. I mean, can you speak to that? Like, do you think that, I don't know, it makes me wonder about our practices and why it is that, yeah.
Again, it's so speculating, but when I studied the Talmud, and a lot of the rabbis who are quoted in the Talmud, which is a compendium really of commentaries and stories and conversations and of people from different centuries, even kind of pasted together. So it looks like they were all in dialogue with each other, but their words are, but they weren't necessarily in dialogue. Those rabbis were also, many of them, at least my teachers taught me this, and I tend to believe this, I feel it. They were mystics. So they weren't just, making legal decisions. They were mystics, but they also had day jobs. So they were doing these mystical, meditations, which we'll learn more about maybe in another session. And they were also working as tradesmen and farmers. And so the culture they lived in was much more embodied. It was on the land, and there were rituals, the seasonal rituals that we've tried to reclaim as urban, we're mostly urban culture, although now so many of us are going back to the land and finding ways to be on the land and in relationship with the land and the trees and the rocks and the animals. But for a lot of Jewish history in the diaspora, people were separated from land and didn't work the land and live on the land. But I think originally the early mystics, they did. So they were much more in their bodies, and they didn't have TV and they didn't have internet, and so I think really there's a cycle that's coming around now when we're realizing that this information cannot be cut off from our place in the cosmos. So there's two main streams of Kabbalah historically that you can trace. One is called the Yordei HaMerkavot, or the throne mysticism, where the whole impetus was, how can I get my consciousness to rise up to the divine, to the feet of the divine throne? And even though we say, oh, God is not physical, they had imagery of the divine on a throne. It's kind of mind-blowing imagery, but it's not out of line with physics and the way physics, images what's out there in the universe. But the other stream was creation Kabbalah that takes off from the story of creation. And I think it's more of a downward flow. There's an upward flow and a downward flow. And I would call that creation Kabbalah really cosmological Kabbalah. It's really concerned with, how did this world get to be here? And how did we get to be here? And what are we doing here? And what's our job here? What's our task? What's the human project about? So yeah, I think that's our time for today, you all. Any last words?
Just want to share that I watched just as we started, the full moon was like right on the horizon, and I've just been like watching it ascend. So yeah, it's been keeping us company.
Thank you for that image. It'll make it here a little bit later, but yeah. So if you want to practice this, I'll send you the melody. You don't need the melody, but you can play with it. I mean, this is just, it's one way of doing it. There's for a long time, I only did things in the vertical plane. And then some months ago, we started in some of the other groups that I work with, my longtime training group students. We started, experimenting with bringing in the horizontal plane, so that gives us the three spatial dimensions. Vertical plane is made up of vertical and horizontal. The horizontal is the horizontal and sagittal dimensions. And then the sagittal plane is the sagittal and vertical. So if you know plane geometry, we want to bring in all the dimensions of space, and then there's other dimensions of time and invisible dimensions that we bring in. But, you know, you can start with what I shared and play with that. You can find spirals, twist it around or whatever, but, or just stick with it and see where it takes you. That's what practices are good for. Not to hem you in, but to give you a starting point. So. All right, everybody, have a beautiful evening.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi Dan.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Soon.
Wow.